welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a deep breath and cracking open a stack of sources that reveal, well, a new front in global competition. One that's subtle, but frankly devastating.
Yeah, we're diving into the critical material around China's rapidly tightening control over rare earth minerals.
And our mission today is to figure out why these materials, things we've largely ignored, are suddenly being called the single most pressing national security threat facing the U.S.
It's way more than just a trade spat. I mean, the reporting we've all been looking at, it explicitly calls this economic warfare, and the consequences are already unfolding for American tech and defense.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The core finding seems crystal clear. China is essentially weaponizing the periodic table. They control something like 85% of the global processing capacity for these minerals.
And that word processing is everything. That monopoly gives them a complete supply chain chokehold.
A chokehold on what, exactly?
On everything from the smartphone screen you might be looking at right now to the missile defense systems that are, protecting our allies.
So today we're going to unpack the specific controls China has put in place, how this dependency was frankly allowed to grow over 3 decades, and why the U.S. is now stuck.
Stuck in a really severe 3 to 5 year window of maximum vulnerability. Scrambling to rebuild an industry we basically just gave away.
Let's start with that opening move, the declaration of controls. The sources lay out a very clear, very calculated timeline.
It was a warning shot, a very pointed one. In quick succession, Beijing banned the export of gallium, germanium, and antimony.
And those 3 are?
They're the precision building blocks. You absolutely need them for the compound semiconductors and specialized optics used in, advanced defense systems, telecom, high-speed chips.
And we get almost all of them from China. But the real hammer, as the sources describe it, fell a little later with something called Announcement Number 61 from their Ministry of Commerce.
That's when it got serious. That announcement expanded the restrictions dramatically. It put in place the toughest rare earth export controls in history.
Covering how many more?
12 more rare earth elements, and here's the critical part. It expanded the ban to any product that contains them, even in trace amounts.
That distinction between just mining the rock and actually processing it, that's the piece that's so often missed. But it's the entire story here, isn't it?
It's the core of the problem. China doesn't control the planet's geology, but they do control the complex chemistry needed to make these elements usable.
It's strategic patience.
Absolutely. 30 years of it. They spent 3 decades building the infrastructure to turn raw ore, which is basically just low-value rock, into the refined, high-purity elements you need for things like laser guidance or high-efficiency motors.
So we can mine it here, but we can't refine it.
We can dig it up in California, sure.
Yeah.
But if you can't process that material to 99.99% purity, it's economically worthless. China used massive subsidies. They accepted huge environmental costs, all to dominate this one critical, difficult step.
And now they're holding the entire, $2 trillion tech sector hostage with it?
That's it. And that trace amounts rule you mentioned makes the chokehold just stunningly effective.
Explain that. So a European company.
Right. If a German company, say, uses Chinese processed samarium to make a magnet, and then they try to sell that magnet to a U.S. defense contractor.
That magnet is now banned.
Exactly. It's an airtight global control over the essential supply chain, and that creates immediate systemic risk. And it's hitting our national security first.
Let's look at some of those specific examples from the source material, because the military impact is just profound. We're talking about America's most advanced weapon systems suddenly at the mercy of a foreign adversary.
Take the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter.
Okay.
The documents we've seen show a single F-35 needs about 50 pounds of samarium cobalt permanent magnets.
50 pounds.
Yeah.
For its actuators and guidance systems, right?
Mm-hmm. And China just cut off the global supply of processed samarium.
So this immediately hits the big defense players. I saw Raytheon, the company that makes Tomahawk cruise missiles, they acknowledged supply chain issues right away.
They did. And Lockheed Martin, the ones building the F-35s, they publicly said they face vulnerabilities in their procurement.
Which is corporate speak for what?
It's corporate speak for, we can no longer guarantee we can get the parts we need to fulfill multi-billion-dollar weapons contracts that Congress has already paid for.
That affects everything. Military readiness, training, everything.
And it's not just fighter jets, it's across the board. Javelin anti-tank weapons, Patriot missile defense, sonar systems for the Navy, satellite communications, drones. They all need these specific materials.
So the weapon isn't the minerals. It's the complex, polluting factory process that they cornered. But the civilian economy is just as vulnerable. Let's talk about an element I'm sure most people have never heard of, dysprosium.
Dysprosium is the canary in the coal mine for civilian tech. It's pricey, over $300 a kilogram, and it's essential because it strengthens neodymium magnets, letting them work in high-heat environments.
So without it, what happens?
Without dysprosium, the motor in your EV overheats and fails on the highway. Military gear breaks down in the heat of combat. You can't just swap it out for something else. It has unique properties.
And China produces. What's the number?
An incredible 95% of the world's dysprosium.
And the reach into just our everyday lives is absolute. Neodymium is in your noise-canceling headphones.
Lanthanum, cerium, those are in your smartphone screen. Gadolinium is in MRI machines at the hospital. You can't get away from it.
So China has effectively issued a global ultimatum. It's play by our commercial rules or your entire tech sector just stops working.
That summarizes the threat perfectly.
Which begs the obvious question, how on earth did the U.S. let this happen? This wasn't bad luck. You said it was a deliberate 30-year strategy.
That's exactly right. Look, the elements themselves aren't actually rare in the Earth's crust, but concentrated economically viable deposits are rare. And more importantly, processing them is chemically complex, it's energy intensive, and it creates a huge environmental mess.
And China saw those problems not as a barrier, but as a strategic opportunity.
They did. They played the long game while the West was focused on quarterly reports. Their strategy was massive government subsidies to their producers, letting them deliberately sell at a loss to price Western companies out of the market.
And the most famous casualty of that strategy was right here in the U.S., the Mountain Pass mine in California.
It was once the world's largest producer, but its processing operations were shut down in 2002. It just couldn't compete with the flood of cheap, subsidized Chinese material. We had the resource, but we gave up the ability to refine it.
And here's the true scale of that leverage. The global market for the raw minerals is only about $16 billion a year.
A tiny number, globally speaking. But by controlling that $16 billion choke point, China controls the downstream products, the magnets, the electronics, the batteries, worth over $2 trillion.
That is a staggering ratio. It's like controlling the one tiny valve that regulates water for an entire city.
You don't have to own the city, you just own the valve. And now they've added another layer of control.
What's that?
Their new export licensing system. It requires American companies to hand over proprietary technology, intellectual property, and detailed supply chain data just to get access to these materials.
So it's corporate espionage with a legal framework.
That's what the analysts are calling it. And we saw a preview of this chaos back in 2010.
With Japan, right.
Yeah.
China cut off their exports over a territorial dispute.
And the price of neodymium oxide, which you need for magnets, it's skyrocketed. It went from $50 a kilogram to over $500 in just 6 months.
That was the flashing red warning light for the entire world.
It was. It forced some Japanese companies to physically move their factories to China just to get materials. And the research is scathing on this point.
Oh.
We've had 15 years since that warning to build alternatives, and we did almost nothing.
And now we're paying the price.
Yeah.
And it's hitting the listener directly in the wallet. Let's talk about the consumer costs that are already showing up.
Okay, start with the biggest purchase most people make after a house. A car. Specifically, an electric vehicle.
Okay.
Because of these constraints, analysts are projecting EV production costs could go up by 15 to 20% in the next 2 years.
Which in real dollars means what? An extra $3,000 to $6,000 on the sticker price of a new EV.
Exactly. That's a huge hit to affordability. But it's not just big-ticket items. We're looking at a potential $50 to $100 price hike on flagship smartphones by late 2026 if this holds.
But the most tangible cost, the sources say, is hitting American workers right now.
Yeah, they detail the case of a small company, Midwest Magnetics in Ohio. When China expanded the export controls last year, their material costs spiked 40% overnight.
And they can't just pass that cost on to their customers.
No. So they were in an impossible spot. They had to lay off 35 people in November. That's the real-world human cost of this dependency.
And that connects right back to the national security side. The CSIS report from October 2025. It didn't mince words. It called this the most significant defense supply chain vulnerability since World War II.
A crisis not seen in 80 years. And the U.S. military is racing against a 2027 deadline from the NDAA to eliminate Chinese magnets from our weapon systems.
But our domestic capacity is nowhere near ready. I mean, former Pentagon officials are on the record saying if a major conflict broke out in the next few years, we would struggle to sustain weapons production.
The ripple effects are everywhere. The renewable energy sector is getting hit with wind turbine projects stalling. Each of those giant turbines needs about 2 tons of rare earth magnets. And of course, the medical sector, MRI machines, X-ray equipment is facing delays.
So what's being done? The government is finally pouring money into this, right?
Oh yeah, the investment is significant now. The Pentagon announced a $400 million investment in MP Materials, the company at the revived Mountain Pass mine, to expand processing.
And Congress has proposed something like $15 billion over 5 years for the whole industry.
That sounds like a decisive response, but the analysis we have says the math just doesn't work fast enough.
Why not?
Because physics and chemistry have their own timeline. Even with unlimited money, MP Materials won't reach full-scale heavy rare earth processing until 2027, maybe 2028. Other sources in Canada or Australia are still 5 to 7 years away.
So we are locked into this 3 to 5 year period of extreme vulnerability, no matter what.
That's the window. And that fixed timeline gives China a very powerful and arguably more insidious strategic option than just a permanent ban.
You're talking about strategic whiplash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A permanent ban would justify the West spending whatever it takes to build alternatives. China's smarter play is to use temporary, painful restrictions to cause chaos, and then ease them just enough to kill the investment case for those Western alternatives.
Because if you're a private company about to spend billions on a new processing plant, you can't do it if you think cheap, subsidized Chinese supply might flood the market next year and make you obsolete.
It's a way to trap U.S. companies in a state of perpetual dependency. As one former commerce official put it, the U.S. brought a balance sheet to a geopolitical chess match. We just fundamentally misread the game.
Okay, let's pull it all together. The 3 critical takeaways for you, the listener. 1. China controls 85% of rare earth processing and is actively using that monopoly as an economic weapon.
2. The immediate shortages are driving up costs for everyone, adding thousands to EV prices and threatening the production capability of the U.S. military.
And 3. Even with a massive government response, real domestic alternatives are still 3 to 5 years away, locking the U.S. into a period of extreme strategic vulnerability.
Which leaves us with the final provocative thought. We're fighting economic warfare on the periodic table, and the clock is ticking. The question isn't just if the U.S. will build domestic capacity. It's whether we can do it before China's strategic whiplash guts those investments and traps us in this cycle for good.
Indeed. We've seen what 15 years of inaction has cost us. What actions could possibly compress that crucial 3 to 5 year timeline? That's the question we'll leave you to explore.